The air was electric that night, thick with tension, possibility, and something that felt almost ancient, like two great rivers meeting for the first time, carving a canyon between them. The room pulsed with breathless anticipation. Cameras clicked like tiny insects. The hum of the audience barely concealed their nervous energy. Overhead lights cast long, dramatic shadows, and at the center of it all two men stood, facing each other like champions before a fight. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, slick-haired, silver-tongued, sharp as a blade. A man born into politics, polished by wealth and legacy, standing tall in his tailored suit like it was made of armor. And across from him, John Kennedy, the Louisiana senator, plain, speaking, unpredictable, eyes like weathered stone. A southern oak of a man, folksy on the outside, but harboring a steel-trap mind underneath that Louisiana drawl. The crowd hushed. "I challenge you," Newsom said, voice cold and clear, "to defend what you just said about California's approach to governance. You think freedom is walking around with a gun, but people are dying in the streets. You think regulation is tyranny, but we regulate to protect lives. Tell me, just once what you would do differently that actually helps people, not slogans." 9 seconds passed. Kennedy didn't blink. He didn't rush. He simply stepped forward, leaned into the microphone, and delivered a reply so unexpected, so honest, and so quietly devastating that the room fell utterly silent. But to understand what made that moment hit with the force of a landslide, we have to go back. Back before the challenge. Back before the lights and the cameras. Back to who these men were, not as politicians, but as people. Gavin Newsom grew up in Marin County, just north of San Francisco. His mother was a political aide, his father a judge who moved in powerful circles. Gavin was dyslexic. Reading was hard. Learning was slow. He once said the words public speaking made his skin crawl when he was young. But the insecurity drove him to overcompensate. He became obsessed with being polished, articulate, in control. He got into politics not just for legacy, but for redemption. The boy who couldn't read in front of the class wanted to one day speak in front of the world. Yet, under the surface, there was always a flicker of fear, a feeling he wasn't enough. John Kennedy, no relation to that Kennedy, grew up in a small town in Mississippi before moving to Louisiana. His dad was a pipe fitter. His mom worked in a bakery. No silver spoons, just calloused hands and long nights. He devoured books, philosophy, economics, law, but he never let go of his roots. He spoke like home. Sounded like someone you'd meet in line at the hardware store, but behind the accent was a man who had taught at Oxford and clerked under the best legal minds in the country. People underestimated him all the time. That was his quiet superpower. The night they met on that debate stage in D.C. was supposed to be a political sparring match, California vs. Louisiana, two visions of America, but what unfolded was something else entirely. The stage was built like a coliseum. Red and blue lighting bathed the walls. The theme, the future of American values. Each man brought his playbook. Newsom opened with passion. Stats, charts, projections, all delivered in crisp rhetoric. He painted California as a progressive utopia. Clean energy, inclusive policies, economic growth. Kennedy countered with stories gritty, raw, unpolished anecdotes about people who felt forgotten. "You talk about clean energy," he said, "but folks in my state still boil water after a storm because the pipes are 30 years old. You regulate us out of business and then ask why we can't keep up." It was a collision of realities. Then came the moment. Newsom, tired of Kennedy's charmant story routine, challenged him point blank. It was meant to be the knockout punch, But Kennedy didn't retreat. He didn't yell. He just told a story. He leaned into the mic. "You want to know what I do differently?" he said slowly. "Let me tell you about a woman named Loretta. She's 68, lives in West Monroe, Louisiana, raised 4 kids on her own, worked 3 jobs her whole life: waitress, janitor, nursing assistant. She don't own stocks. She don't know what GDP means. But last year, her electricity bill doubled. She started skipping meals to afford her heart medicine. Then the town shut down the clinic cause the doctor couldn't afford malpractice insurance anymore. And you know what she said to me? The room held its breath. She said, 'Mr. Kennedy, I don't want politics. I just want to live long enough to see my grandbaby walk.'" He paused. "That's my platform." Newsom didn't move. His face flickered with something confusion, maybe even shame. Because the truth wasn't about who had the better argument. It was about who remembered the people beneath the policies. That moment shook the room, not because it was political theater, but because it was human, and for Newsom it triggered something deeper. He'd built his career on being right, but suddenly he saw the crack in his foundation. What if being right wasn't enough? Backstage, after the debate, he sat alone in his dressing room. The lights were dim. The applause had faded. And for the first time in years, he felt unsure. His aide walked in, handed him a water bottle, and said, "You okay?" Newsom didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I spent years learning how to speak. Maybe it's time I learn how to listen." At the same time, Kennedy was back at his hotel, staring out the window at the D.C. skyline. His chief of staff said, "You got him good tonight." But Kennedy just shook his head. "I didn't want to get him. I wanted him to hear." Weeks later, something changed. Newsom reached out privately to Kennedy. No cameras, no press, just a phone call. He asked to visit Louisiana, not for a photo op, but to learn. And he did. They walked through towns where the sidewalks were cracked and hope was thin. Newsom listened. Kennedy introduced him to Loretta. She wept when he hugged her. In return, Kennedy visited California, toured shelters in San Francisco, talked to displaced families, mental health workers, recovering addicts. He saw the strain of a city bursting at the seams. Together, they recorded a joint message, not for votes, not for headlines, but for Americans. They spoke plainly. Kennedy said, "We come from different worlds, but we share one home." Newsom said, "We don't have to agree to serve. We just have to care." The video went viral, not because of controversy, but because people were starving for sincerity. Behind it all was a lesson about the cost of ego, the weight of stories, and the radical act of humility. The 9 seconds that made Gavin Newsom speechless weren't about words, they were about truth, a truth he had missed in the noise of ambition, and Kennedy had carried quietly all along. And maybe that's the future of leadership, not shouting over each other, but standing still long enough to hear the pain in someone's silence. Because, in the end, no one remembers the perfect speech, but everyone remembers the moment you were human.